Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate forum. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Slick James Johnson, Ranty Flat Earth, Pixius, is that? Paul Mind War, Ebon Kim, Chocolate Saying, Arwin, and Anon Moto. Very good to have you all.
G'day.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Nathan.
Howdy.
Hello, you. Good evening.
Good morning.
Good evening.
Good evening, good afternoon, hello one and all. So we had a bit of a technical issue. For no apparent reason, my power just completely cut. It wasn't like I was using an excessive amount of stuff either. It just died on its ass for no apparent reason. So it's not been my day. I've had loads of technical issues, which was why the show was originally late, and now a power cut. So we're back up and running now. We've had a proper intro. We had only got through 3 questions in the housekeeping. So if it's okay by you guys, just to keep the ball rolling, I'm going to carry on with housekeeping if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
No problem.
Excellent. So check out part A if you want the other half of the housekeeping questions, but any evidence that we can have a gas pressure without a container?
No.
Nothing.
Nope.
Nope. No? Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
Nothing. Just a belief.
Maybe at the presupposed spherical Earth center, but I don't know.
Only in the movie.
Yep, I've seen it in the encyclopedia once.
It's hollow.
Well, I've talked to a number of people. They're convinced that we drilled to the core of Earth, which I just find absurd.
No, that was only in a movie.
We've only drilled 12
Yeah, I tried
kilometers
telling them that, and then what was it? The super borehole is what, 7.6 miles or something? Is the deepest
12
hole?
kilometers.
Yeah, I think it's
12K.
about 12 kilometers. So, yeah, I think it was in Russia.
Yeah, I saw a documentary on it now because the whole plant that was around it, all of the infrastructure's all been demolished. It's like just rubble, literally just rubble. And the actual hole itself, now, I'm not going to say this, how big do you anticipate this hole is in diameter?
Oh, it's
2 centimeters.
10 meters.
12 inches from what I remember on the from
Yeah, it's
facts.
about the size of a basketball.
Yeah, just a drill stick, basically, that size. Not
Yeah,
bigger.
it's about the size of your standard water borehole. In other words, you're about right if you said about 12 inches across. The top plate is probably a foot and a half across with all the bolts around the outside edge sealing the hole. And they had this little YouTube video just where these random tourists just went up to the super deep borehole, and you know, you wouldn't even know what it was. It just looks like a drain cover, a circular drain cover. Bit rusty with a bit of graffiti on top of it, marking, you know, but the locals call it like the doorway to hell or something. But it's literally just a 12-inch hole.
The breathing hole to hell. It should be
Oh, no.
the breathing hole
doorway
to hell.
What I
The doorway
found
to hell
odd.
is a different one. It's actually, I think it's in Siberia or in Russia somewhere, but there was gas or coal, and the hole is actually like constantly on fire now. And it's actually making like ooh sounds, and they call it, sounds like there's spirits in there. It's called the doorway to hell. I think that's something different. But yeah,
Well, what
I
I
could be
found
wrong.
So that super borehole puts out about 550 Fahrenheit. About 170 Celsius. 24/7. But for some reason, we still have nuclear technology. I've always found that kind of funny.
Interesting.
Why not?
The super borehole puts out 550.
You cut off at the end of your statement, but we heard it the first
How
time.
does the
Shout out to
borehole
Leonardo Gonzalez for the super chat. Thank you very much indeed for your support. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, boiling methane as well.
There's heat here's hydrogen if you're but
Yeah, it might be
does
a hydrogen.
how can you utilize that over that kind of distance in a hole?
Well, I mean, so that's about the same temperature that spent nuclear rods give out, to be honest. So really, you could just kind of take the same system and just use geothermics, couldn't you?
A little, it depends. Geothermic stations, they're not like long tubes into the ground and then everything is on top. No, you actually have to have the engine relatively close proximity to the heat, because heat decreases over distance. So
Yeah, but it's 550 coming out of the top of the pipe. That's why they had to seal it, right?
really,
Yeah, from my understanding, if you want to go, you can go
but
check.
is it even sealed then?
Yeah, it has like a drain cover, and like Nathan was describing, that's exactly how it looks.
Okay, that's weird.
I think it'd be theoretically impossible to go any further than that because of the pressure. Yeah, they'll just keep blowing out the drill tips.
So I don't know if you were here earlier, Nathan, but I came here to have a question answered, and I was hoping you could answer it. You seem to know more than anybody else.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but go ahead. Feel free to ask.
Okay, so
Nathan, shout out first. Shout out to your super chat.
Shout out for the super chat. I did. Leonardo Gonzalez, thank you very much. I did do.
We didn't hear it.
People
All right,
were
so-
talking. That's why.
So here's my question, Nathan. Okay, now I'm going to use allegedly and supposedly, so nobody think, I'm not trying to say this exists or it doesn't exist. I just have a basic question. And so we have a Mars rover. On the short side, it's a 24-minute signal back and forth. On the long side of the orbit, it's about 48 minutes. Now, in the heliocentric model, we're traveling about 1.5 million miles per hour through the galaxy. So if you send a signal from Mars and it takes 48 minutes, even with radio waves, there's a little bit of a different consensus there, whether radio waves travel in a straight line till they hit a medium. If they do, they do not. Kind of get different answers. I don't really care about that. But if we move 1.5 million miles in 1 hour from where that radio signal is pointing to give a signal, how is Earth ever in position to receive the signal? And I can't get an answer from NASA. There's no math on this. They have a magic math equation for everything. And I'm wondering if you know an answer to this question, how does a radio signal reach Earth if we're 1.5 million miles out of position?
I don't know. The
Pretty
answer.
interesting question.
That's a very
seen-
heavy.
I've seen the rhetoric in terms of them communicating with the Mars rover, and yeah, they openly disclose that there's a massive delay. So they send out a signal, a very minor signal. This is all bullshit. This is all nonsense. There's no vacuum of space. There's no rock called Mars in the vacuum of space that you can travel to. So this is all bollocks. But ultimately, their narrative does include the delay. However, as you point out, us being lined up when we physically changed position by a massive, massive amount just doesn't make sense in the narrative, and I'd agree with you on that. Just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah, and
there's
they always have some magic math. And what I find odd is there's no magic math for this equation. They always have some BS, math equation. There's just nothing, and I just find that odd because they always have something.
Maybe
Yeah,
they do.
I don't see why radio signals go in all directions. Really, this whole idea that radio signals will only go in a straight line when it enters a vacuum, I really don't see the validity in any of that.
Even if it doesn't, it still has to that radio wave still has to
Nope.
travel 1.5 million miles.
It's going to wave out. It maybe will degrade as it waves out, spreads out, but it will go in all directions. It can face, at least. If it's on the other side of the planet, then it's of course not going to reach Earth. But as long as it does face Earth, presumably, then yeah, it should always reach it, even if there is no direct, or if the path changes, because there's radio signals going all over the place. I don't see why it should only be in a specific line, so you must, like on a roundabout, shoot the radio signal in a specific way so it will hit the Earth right when the Earth passes by. I think that is a ridiculous concept.
Well, they also use laser communication as well, and we all know that lasers definitely travel in a straight line, correct?
Right, but lasers probably travel a lot quicker.
No, they travel at the same speed.
Anything can travel.
Radio waves travel at 97% the speed of light. The speed difference is negligible.
Okay.
You can see my
A
screen.
laser wouldn't be powerful enough to go that far. Surely. It would have to be an insanely massive laser. Hugely powerful. I don't even think.
No, not necessarily, because if laser is going to travel through a vacuum, a presumed vacuum, that vacuum is not going to absorb so much power of the light because there's so little matter to absorb the light.
But
but we're still 1.5 million miles out of position, though.
If you point a laser, say I'm holding a laser and then I go to point it at a target that's a kilometer away, that tiny little beam is going to be massive. So by the time that beam goes from Mars to Earth, it's going to be so huge, it's not even going to be any different from sending a radio signal.
Can you guys see my screen? Can I make a comment?
Depends on the string.
I'm back. The one problem, even with a laser, you still have the inverse square law problem with any kind of radio transmission. Like I have a little laser that I can shoot around the house to play with the cats. If I shoot it on my floor, it looks fairly small to the cat. But when I shoot it at one of the buildings out in the back of my house, which may be several hundred feet away, it spreads out and looks a lot larger. So even a laser with this directional, you're still going to have to deal with the inverse square law, which basically means
Snell's law, I think.
Yeah. Well, the more the source light, whether gravity, whatever they say that is, I'm not arguing for gravity. I'm just saying that's the problem they have. Any kind of light source, any radio frequency, anything. By the time that you transmit it, by the time it gets to where we're at, the path losses drop drastically. So there's a huge problem, not just the fact of what you're talking about directionally. You have a path loss issue. The source loss. You're losing less, getting less and less of the signal coming to you. So that's my biggest problem with the Mars thing, or any kind of transmission, even the Voyager that's supposed to be on the outer skirts of our solar system, which would have some kind of nuclear back in the 60s, some kind of radio thing. How do they even picking up that signal? By the time it would get here, it'd be so low that you couldn't even pick it up. And then you run into the problem with the magnetic field around the Earth and the radiation around the Earth. How do they pick up that signal, that very, very weak signal through all that as well? How they filter all that crap out.
And not to mention, we also moved 1.5 million miles out of position from where it's aiming as well. Even with the wave, that's kind of a lot.
Well, even in the vacuum issue, a wave. I mean, I think Quantum Racer dealt with this last week or week before, actually a couple weeks ago. A wave, you have to have a medium by which the wave can be carried through. So like water has wave in it, but it's water. I mean, a vacuum cannot carry a wave because there's no medium to carry it. So there's a problem there.
but it's a little schizophrenic because I get two different answers. Some people say that exactly what you said, and then other people are just saying, yeah, it travels as a wave. And then I ask them how, and they don't know. And that's the problem, is that I'm not saying I'm not on either side of the flat Earth with this question. I just want to know, what is the math? Because they have an excuse for everything. It's just, I find it so odd. They have nothing.
They do not have an excuse for everything. There's a lot of questions that they don't answer. I don't know why. But also, look, the black hole that they supposedly captured an image of was 23.6 billion miles away. So apparently, we can communicate through vast distances to gather data from anything in their outer space.
Just numbers. It's just numbers, mate.
Exactly. That comes off the back of the question, any evidence of the distance to the sun? Because this is all an extrapolation from a presupposition that Earth is a sphere, and therefore the mathematics for the distances incorporates that R value, and then a presupposition that Venus is the same size as the presupposed spherical Earth. And then they apply Kepler's third law to give them the ratios. That's it. It's just maths. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that Mars is a certain distance away because they say it is. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that Mars is a particularly rocky planet in a vacuum that we can travel to, or the black hole is billions of light years. It's all meaningless. Just numbers based on a presupposition that the Earth is a sphere and Venus is the same size sphere as Earth. That's it.
Adding to the thing that they don't seem to explain, if you want to show my video, this month I was able to. I keep seeing the moon in daylight, and it's a half moon, and the sun is up as well. I think it was almost like it's pretty steep angles, like they're both about 45-degree angles away from where I was at. And I tried finding an official explanation of why there's shadows on the moon during the daytime when the sun is directly overhead just as well. They don't have one. There's no official explanation through NASA, government, or astrophysicists, and that's it. The most you get are people just kind of making up answers in Quora or something like that.
The thing about the globe, the whole thing is based on a belief system. And this is why these people are having such a problem with me, because I am not part of their belief system. So people like Jose get all bent out of shape because of that. So they're trying to pull me into something that I'm not a part of. So that's why when they try to make me say things or tell me I'm dishonest for not saying it, that's because they are part of a belief system. The whole globe will fall apart without belief.
Well, these are the same people that try to convince me that tinfoil rockets and 6-inch gaps in the moon lander are no problem at all because they built the inside really well. So that's their line of critical thinking. It's kind of laughable.
How dare you? Those curtain rods are actually very sophisticated technology. The gaffer
I
tape
believe it all
is
depends
special.
on your faith in tinfoil technology of 1969. Some believe that we didn't have the tinfoil technology to go to the moon. Some don't.
Yeah, but the Israelis, they used tinfoil on their one, the one that crashed. Did you see it? The gold-coloured tinfoil strapped to the lander.
Yeah, I know. And then the argument becomes, well, the outside, you don't need to worry about the 6-inch gaps in the panels. Even though in a thing in engineering, there's a thing called points of failure. You don't send something. We don't build submarines out of screen mesh, do we?
It's funny, we can send up tinfoil up in outer space, but if you wear it over your head, you're called crazy.
Well, I have another question for you, Nathan, if you want to take it.
Yeah, man, I'm not going anywhere. I'm stuck here.
So in case you guys don't know, that stars in upper atmosphere can't be observed from anything but the Hubble Telescope. The Hubble Telescope does not even see invisible light. It uses a special radiation camera, image sensor to grab the images and send them back to Earth, and then they use computers to put it back. So my question is, you have orientation, you have point of reference, you have the XYZ coordinates, XYZ. If we send a ship out and you watch any sci-fi movie and they need to find their position in space, what's the first thing they pull up? Star charts. So, I'm very confused on how we're able to find position in space if nothing can see stars. Now, I've done a lot of research in this. I actually joined on meetup.org, an amateur balloon astronomer. We send up balloons every month, a couple times a month. It costs about $50 a month. It's a great club. But the problem is we sent up ultraviolet, infrared, visible light. We use a 90 FOV with 35 millimeter and 55 millimeter camera. So, we can see the most true representation of space. Sorry.
And can I stop you there? Any chance can you share your screen and show us some of this tech? I love tech. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, we have some stuff on YouTube. I'll post it in the chat.
Well, if you can screen share it just as you're talking, just so you can say, oh, this is that and that, rather than you know.
I don't have it ready right now. I apologize.
Oh, no worries.
But
I just like
yeah,
seeing
I'll
tech
go-
stuff. But
yeah,
that's okay. Don't worry.
I'll link it after. I'll grab it after. It's not a problem.
Nathan, you cut him off just at the point where he was gonna tell us what the results were.
Yeah, the results are that,
tech stuff.
from what I can tell, see, I used to think, well, NASA can't show stars because they can't fake the CGI. And that's the line of thinking I had until, I went out and tested it for myself. And pretty much from what I can tell, Hubble is the only thing in space that can see stars, period. Now, the problem with, people will give me the exposure shutter argument, but the problem with the exposure shutter argument, it only counts for visible light. That's it. It only counts for visible light the minute you introduce night vision, ultraviolet, infrared. The exposure shutter argument goes out the window. So, meaning that if I send an infrared camera out, I want to see everything white out on purpose. I want to get a crappy picture on purpose just to prove that you can see these things. The problem is you can't. And I find it very odd. I don't understand how any space objects travel anywhere. We can't send up anything. We're looking for them, the only thing I can observe is the moon and the sun in the upper atmosphere. So I'm wondering, how, and they'll say, oh, well, these satellites, they all have special cameras. And I'll say, oh, great, we verified they have special cameras to see stars. Can I see a picture? And then all I hear is crickets. That could, I'm very confused on if we have cameras that can see all the stars and find their position and everything, but yet we have no pictures of that. How do things find their position in space?
They don't. There's no such thing as space. Space is not a vacuum. It's not real. It's all fake. So the question I have for you is, do you know what Sophia is?
Oh, yeah, of course. I looked up Sophia and all that. Yeah, I believe that Hubble is Sophia, from what I can tell, because I don't even there's no other representation of the special radiation camera that Hubble uses on any other object in space. It's just the only thing that could see it, from what I can tell. They say that they can, but if you ask them for a picture, some sort of proof, it's just nothing. You just hear wind in the.
So what you're saying is, in your experience, using all kinds of different camera techniques and sending balloons very high up, you never once was able to capture any signs of any stars.
No, and I'm actually trying to get a picture on purpose. I don't care how bad the picture is, how white out the stars are. I'm just I want to be able to see it. That's all I want, and we can't.
I have a question. Have any of you guys seen a balloon launch with a camera at night? I've always seen them during the day. I want to see what it looks like at night.
Well, that's why we use that's why I use the infrared cameras, because it doesn't matter if it's nighttime or daytime. Stars should show up.
From experience, though, if you're trying to get stars in a scope, who on the panel has used a telescope at some stage?
I have.
Yeah, I use high-power telescopes.
Okay, so it's very different kettle of fish trying to look at a star through a telescope. Shout out to Retro Bill for the super chat. Thank you very much. He says congratulations on baby Clover. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your support. But if anybody's got experience looking at the stars as opposed to the moon, for example, you've got to have really good stability in the scope. And if the thing's rocking back and forth because it's rising up on a balloon, how the hell are you ever going to get anything? You're just not going to, I don't think.
Well, you can. Depends on which format you use. That's why we send up many different spectrums. We've been through them all of them.
You can't, unless you get stability. Like those telescopes that I've seen and use around the corner for me, that every Thursday they do a little satellite demonstration. And these ones, you punch the coordinates in, they sit there, they're about $5,000, they're on a tripod and they're all programmed, and they sit there and they're stable and you can see it. But they're still so small, and these are high powered. If you didn't have stability, you wouldn't see it. You would not be able to see it.
Most of the time I've looked at stars, because I've seen a few YouTube videos since, because my telescope actually went to the mother-in-law's when we had our first child, so I haven't used it since. Good nearly 3 years. But anyway, the point being that when I was looking at the stars, you tend to find that they didn't look a great deal different to what you could just look with your naked eye, through, what is it, probably an 8-inch scope, or maybe a bit smaller. I forgot the size of it. Anyway, the point being that you very rarely get anything different to what you see with your naked eye. Yeah, if you look at a planet, it's very different, but the stars, no, They tend not to be, or in my experience.
And by the way, if you're at the outer edges of Earth that's spinning, things should appear to be spinning faster on the outer edge than it is on the inside.
Yeah, we're not spinning.
So
Well, that's
Yeah, I know.
just that's the the universe turns clockwise, and that one thing that science can't explain, physics can't explain, is that every single planet orbits at the same speed, and that the entire universe is also orbiting at the same speed, but we cannot show this in physics at all, and they have no explanation for that. I found that very odd as well.
It's because we're not spinning. We're not
Plex-
spinning.
Yeah, Plexus. One thing that I used to think about too is with the star charts that they used when they're in space to figure out where they are. The thing is, everything is moving at different speeds. So those star charts, if they're static, they're not going to be very much help, because if they want to travel anywhere, it's going to be where they were, depending
you
on
do
how
need-
fast that they're
you need
able to.
You do need a static point to find position. Without a static point, you cannot find position. You need
But
was it
everything
1/4?
in outer space, at least how they explain it, is moving. So expanding, however way that you want to put
Yeah,
it.
that is true.
And so they need to make sure that the star charts that they have aren't static, that they're actually calculated to where they're moving and interacting with each other. Otherwise, you're just going to get lost, because at one point, if you're going the speed of light, if you're traveling somewhere that's one light day away, and you're going speed of light, it's going to be moving through space, and that calculation is going to be
You know what we could do with?
it has to be constantly changing.
We could do with the telemetry data from something like, I don't know, the moon landings. Maybe that would help us out.
It's been destroyed.
Yeah, and also they destroyed the moon rocks. Moon rocks don't exist now too. So
Actually, no.
That's
they
not
still have
true.
the moon
I've seen
rocks.
one.
They just
That's
said
not
it was petrified wood.
and pumice, and then another one was had iron in it and copper, which are magnesium, which are man-made materials.
So let me try to explain my question again. So I live in a place that's really polluted with light. Like I'm nowhere near like a place where it's good to look at the sky at night. Even so, with my P900 in my backyard at night, I can take a picture and leave the shutter for like, I don't know, 4 seconds, and I can see a lot of stars, right? Because the shutter speed is like 4 seconds. So what I was saying is I just want to see a balloon shot of this balloon going where we usually see it at 115,000 feet, 120,000 feet. Where
Can I post pictures in the chat? I have screen caps.
I'd love to. I want to see that.
Sure, I'll post it right now.
I don't want to see a black sky because it's just so weird. It's pitch black. The sky is pitch black. Not a single thing on there except the sun. So I'm thinking, if the sun was away, and you leave the shutter for 10 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever, do you see anything? Even like, even if the stars are, there's like a trailer to them because of your.
Well, that's why we sent it up with ultraviolet and infrared, because ultraviolet and infrared do not use shutter exposure in their image processing at all, and that's why
I'd like to
those up
see
in
this.
particular.
Please post it in the chat. I want to see it.
Can somebody present it?
Yep, hold on 1 second. I'm going through my folder right now.
Please.
You wouldn't happen to have an old well you could climb down per chance? You can actually go down a well during the day and actually see the stars. Not many people know that.
Yeah, it's because
I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah, it's the way that you're getting less light, obviously, down a well.
Yeah. Go climb down a well. If you're in a place of high light pollution, climb down a well and then get the camera and point up and you'll see stars.
I need a well.
Yeah. Supposedly it works.
A guy explained the principle using different shades of black, so this might be boring to some people, but I don't care, I'm a geek. So he took a black paint, standard black paint, and then this special black paint that was supposed to be the blackest of black. You couldn't get any blacker. And then he has what looks like another blob of paint, and he gets his meter, and measures how much light they're actually reflecting. And his is less, it's lower, it's reflecting less than the blackest of black paint that you can buy. And what he's actually done is he's cut a hole in the table. So he's drilled a hole that looks about the same size as a paint blob, and then underneath the hole he's put a box, and the box he's painted with the actual black paint that is used for the second demonstration. And all that happens is that the light's going inside the box, bouncing around, and then not being returned out of the hole. So he's literally getting less light reflected back, even off the darkest of dark paint. It's reflecting more than a little hole. So it's the same principle as your well. You go down and there's going to be virtually no light that's going to be reflected down that well. So at the bottom, all you see is a tunnel to the darkest spot that you can see above you, and you get a really, really crystal clear, dark picture of the night sky with the twinkly stars shining through.
So here's a screen cap of one of our balloon launches, and you can see it's about 90,000 feet, which is about 19 miles up. But all balloons go from 120,000 to 170,000 feet, depending on the time of year and temperature, and they always pop about the 25-mile mark. I've never heard of a balloon going over 25 miles. Some people say that you can if you use different materials, but I'm just part of a small club, and we obviously can't afford that type of balloon. So
why do they pop?
What's that?
Why do they pop? Is it because they're expanding?
Yeah, there's a bunch of different explanations, but supposedly if you use like different materials, you can go further than 25 miles. But those are thousands of dollars for those balloons, which obviously we can't afford.
So the higher up you go, the gas that's inside the balloon is trying to escape from the balloon and disperse into the atmosphere around it.
Yeah, it kind of expands till it pops. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's trying to escape. Yeah, gas pressure. It's trying to fill the void.
Yeah, and as you can see in the picture, we have visible light and we have an infrared here. Now, the problem with the infrared here is that this should be all pretty much white if even one star is in the foreground. And that's what I was looking for. I wanted to get the crappiest, most whitest out picture I could on purpose. And you see the problematic problem here is that it's just nothing. It's just nothing. So then, the next question is, how do you find position? You got to remember, even if, go with excuse, well, we have special imaging sensors, you would have to miniaturize Hubble. You would have to miniaturize all the computers and the processing, because Hubble doesn't actually do any processing. It only captures the data and sends it back to Earth. Then computers on Earth do the processing. So you have all these problems,
So can I just?
I think the main reason you're not picking up stars there, I reckon, is just the aperture, because you've got so much light in a lower section. You basically wouldn't be able to pick up any of this starlight.
That's a visible light argument. Okay, the minute you introduce other spectrums, those arguments go out the window, which is specifically why we use those different spectrums. I've heard these arguments before, and that's why we take great care to use other spectrums. Now, you're absolutely correct in visible light. You are correct in that argument, but we don't use only visible light. And this excuse of, well, NASA doesn't know how to set two different cameras, two different exposures in 2019 is a little absurd. It's not 1967 anymore. You know what I mean?
So can I ask you a question? When you say the balloons pop, they can't go any higher. So the force of the pressure forcing its way out of the balloon. So the pressure from the balloon, the trapped air that's trying to escape, right, forces the balloon to literally erupt and then obviously expand into the atmosphere. Yeah.
Yeah.
So why isn't the vacuum of space pulling the rest of the atmosphere off the Earth? If this is what's happening to the gas pressure locked inside the balloon, it's literally ripping itself apart to try and escape, and it does that. It literally rips apart the balloon. Why is the atmosphere of Earth not doing the same?
Earth does have a gradient of gases as you go up. I mean, that is true. Maybe that's what's doing it. With the different stratospheres and whatnot. supposedly. Different layers have different compositions of gases, right?
Well, what's interesting is if you go to Flickr, there's photos of a bunch of NASA photos, and
Yeah, a friend of mine shared that with me. That archive has more stuff in it than I've even seen produced from NASA. I suggest everybody goes to that Flickr
yeah,
account.
I gave a
It's
link
great. It's
on
great.
Google. And here's some funny things like I've never noticed before. But if you look at some of the photos and you zoom in closer, you can actually see stars on some of them. Not on all of them.
What is this? What is this again?
What kind of
If
gas
you
are they
actually read
using
the
in those
description,
balloons?
I've seen those photos you're talking about. If you go read the description, it says composite right underneath it. And I actually have one of them. They do the effect. They actually use a composite where all the stars spin. If you leave a camera out overnight, they composited that onto the ISS view. But we all know the ISS does not, for that effect to happen, you have to stay in the same position. With ISS, obviously can't.
Do you know what kind of gas they're using in those balloons?
We use helium because it's cheaper. You can use hydrogen, but then so I don't have the FCC license. The club does, and we have to use specific gases and yada yada yada.
That's okay. I was just wondering because
FAA.
so
These
what
photos.
tends to happen to helium under pressure?
Hold on. So these photos, it says lunar orbit, NASA photographs, unprocessed 1800 DPI Hasselblad film scans by Johnson Space Center circa 2005. So they're not composites. They say they're actual photographs, film scans. So when you see the stars, that's not data composites. That's what they say is an actual photograph.
So, where's a picture with stars in it? I don't see any.
You have to go in each one of them, and you'll see stars in certain ones. There's like a little zoom button. Certain ones you won't see any, and
Yeah,
others
is that just
will.
a bad pixel or is that a star?
Yeah, I mean, can you provide? Listen. You just made a claim there, but you just said you can find them. Could you find it for us and then back your claim up that the stars visible in these images?
Yeah.
Great.
I was going through them before.
Yeah, remember, we're supposed to be the group that verifies everything, not just takes it at word, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's Ebon's point. He's not claiming these are pictures of stars. He's saying what NASA say is these are genuine images or scans of a film. So it's presumably originally video film footage that they've scanned in as individual shots, right? That's the claim. Yes. And according to their own pictures, yeah, it might be a dead pixel, it might be a star. Right. But he's saying, there you go. I mean, I can see that on my screen. And yeah, there could be other explanations for it. But ultimately speaking, he's just presenting what they claim and what they show. I don't think Ebon's actually claiming anything. Are you, Ebon?
Yeah, there's also radiation of space.
The only thing I claim is what the official claim is.
Yeah. Also, you got to remember, if you can go to YouTube right now and see what a camera looks like under high radiation. It'll show little image pixels like that going bad. So you can't really tell. Plus, one pixel isn't really evidence. Because you can go to the New Mexico.
There were two pixels. The one that I showed before, there's one pixel. There are actually two pixels. One was brighter than the other. One was fainter.
Yeah, but
and you'll see them in different spots.
Just an interesting talking point because these are the arbiters of the narrative in terms of what the vacuum bullshit of space is, and we're just having a little look at their pictures. Now, whether or not they're stars, whether or not they're real, is obviously, it's not even up for debate, right? These are pictures of Earth from space, from a medium that can't possibly exist, on looking at an Earth that can't possibly exist. So obviously they're total bullshit. We all accept that, right?
Well, if we can't find our position in space, how are you going to ever travel? It's pretty problematic to the whole thing.
You can't have space. Forget about finding a position. This is kind of akin to when people say rockets won't work in space. It's like, why are we begging the question for them? Space isn't real. You can't have gas pressure next to a vacuum. You know, Ranty's absolutely spot on. Yes, you've got a different type of gas at the altitude that the balloon explodes, but ultimately speaking, it's a demonstration of the gas expanding out because of the lower pressure. That's why the balloon expands, because the gradient that you describe, yes, but ultimately speaking, the gas in that instance, a different gas, helium, is expanding in all directions because of the lower pressure not opposing it on the outside skin of the balloon. So because there's a higher pressure in the balloon, it gets bigger and expands and expands and expands until the pressure on the outside is insufficient to contain the pressure on the inside, and it explodes. And then that gas, that helium, will expand in all directions until it reaches the necessary antecedent for it to have a gas pressure in the first instance, a container. And if there are gases surrounding it in the first instance, they would also need the necessary antecedent of a container in order to be gas pressure in the first instance. So there is absolutely gas pressure opposing the helium at higher pressure at altitude. There is gas pressure. So that gas pressure is definitely pressing on something. That you can be assured of.
So,
Hold on.
Do you guys see my screen?
Hold on.
Give me.
Oh, God.
Just I'm good.
Given that that's the case, while I get rumpused by my own panel during the most important detail, that would mean that space is absolutely and unequivocally fake. So the medium we're all discussing and the pictures that have come from it are fake, because the vacuum of space cannot possibly exist.
No, look. The shape of the moon is Pac-Man. The Earth is a wedge.
Well, do you realize why is a very problematic view? Because remember, the number one excuse is that we can't get a good picture of stars because we have to turn down the ISO so low because Earth's so bright. The Earth isn't very bright there. Shouldn't it be showing massive amounts of stars? And for context, I'm showing a picture right now. This is during the daytime. They put a solar filter on a night vision camera. Go take a look of what it shows.
Wow.
And this is captured from Earth, by the way, not upper atmosphere. It seems that around 8 miles, it kind of changes around the Earth. It's just boom. From pretty much what I can tell, you need noble gases to view stars. Otherwise, they're not viewable.
Can you zoom in maybe 1 or 2 steps?
Sure.
Cool. Just looks prettier on screen, that's all. Okay, so this is from the ground. So is the conclusion that, dare I be so bold, the stars are a ground-based phenomenon?
Well, according to everything, yes, because Hubble is the only thing I can find that can see stars in the upper atmosphere. And the excuse for that is they have a special radiation, whatever, sensor image processing.
So, yeah, let's debunk that straight away. So Hubble isn't real. Hubble is claimed to be in a medium that cannot exist. Hubble is in Narnia. So, as you rightly point out, maybe as you said you are aware of Sophia. I'm sure you did say it was you we were talking.
Oh yeah, of course I am. Of course I am. I've been so in the mid '90s. As soon as I saw tinfoil rockets and 6-inch holes in the hull, I knew that NASA was full of crap.
I want
you can't convince me otherwise.
Sure. There's going to be people in the audience that haven't got a slightest clue, and hear Sophia being NASA, being Hubble. What do you mean?
Well, yeah, and then I tried debating with these people, and I'll get the excuse. Well, don't pay attention to the 6-inch gaps. They built the inside really great. That is a very, very weak argument. In case you, I hate to break it to you, it's very weak. And I'm judging a book by its cover. Sorry.
Hey, Arwen, how come when Rumpus rumpuses, you don't tell Rumpus to stop rumpusing? But whenever I just try to say one sentence, you see, stop rumpusing. Do you like Rumpus a lot better than...
I definitely tell Rumpus to stop rumpusing.
No, you don't.
But, yeah, I do, but usually it's just no use. And besides...
Yeah, I guess so it's no use, so you don't say anything.
He invented it.
Shout out to Jason Dean for the super chat.
You can't exactly uphold him to a higher standard, if you know what I mean.
Shout out to Jason Dean for the super chat. Really appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
I've just posted a link in the side chat where somebody claims that you can see the stars through a nighttime launch of a balloon. I've actually taken a quick look of the video, and it does appear that way. But I'd like the guy is it Plexus that's presenting? to have a quick look and just see whether he thinks that's a legitimate video or not. Oops, sorry for the dead air.
Hey, I'm playing the video out to the audience. Cool, very cool. So this is alleged to be a night balloon launch to the stratosphere with the moon coming closer. That's the title.
How high is 31 kilometers? Sorry, I'm American.
Oh, man, this looks so fake.
Yeah, how high is 31 kilometers? I'm American, sorry.
I'm not seeing the ground, and there's a lot of cuts.
Looks so fake to me.
Hello,
That's
Andrew.
how you know it's so real.
Hold on, the guy who posted it, I think, is here. Hey, is that you, Andrew? Hello?
No, I thought Randy.
Well, 31 kilometers is 19 miles, which...
Hold on,
from
we've got
my
a new
experience
guest.
of balloon
Sorry to
launches
interrupt.
would
Guys,
seem about-
sorry. Guys. Hello, Andrew, can you hear us? Okay, sorry about that. Hopefully he's not sniped anybody.
Oh, he's been sniped.
Yeah, my problem with that is like when I do balloon launches, we take great care for data, and there's other than just listing it's 31 kilometers, there's not very much data there, you know, so I can't verify it. That's why I like to do it myself, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. But
Finished housekeeping.
the only thing I didn't cover was R. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius, although we did cover it on part A. If you just tuned in, we had two shows by accident. I had a power cut, basically. So this show's kind of a bit disjointed. But anyway, yeah.
Also, the aperture of 24 millimeters is just very odd for an aperture size.
Why?
Because it'll curve a straight line. You want to stick with 35 or 55 to show true sizes and true curves and true.
You're saying it's just too wide an
with
angle.
With a 90-degree FOV.
It's too wide an angle lens. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Otherwise, it's going to give you a false representation.
Yeah, but what do you actually make of the stars being in it, though?
I don't know. I've never witnessed this, so
Fair enough.
nothing I've seen from my
It's
own
got to be
experience.
more than just this. I want to see the whole thing from launch, from the ground up, and otherwise I want to see it angle downwards to actually confirm that this is not a fabrication of some kind and actually filmed high up. So I don't know. I find it kind of vague from what you've shown so far.
I've shared it in the chat. Feel free to check it out for yourself if you're in the audience.
So, yeah, any proof of R? Is that any proof of Rory?
I'm happy to talk about Rory, if you like.
Another problem I have with this is that if this was so, NASA could show this in every single footage they shoot in space, you know?
Yeah, I would completely agree. If it was that easy, then you'd have tons of it, right?
Yeah, and also like I was in some Discord debate, and they're like, I'm like, why can't they just composite the stars into a photograph? I'm fine with that. And they said, oh, you would just say that's CGI, and that's fine, but I just want to see it once. Is that too much to ask? It's kind of like they tell us satellites exist, but if all I can find is CGI. They say that they have all these magic cameras, but yet nobody can turn it on. And then they'll come with this argument. Well, if it's a secret, how could they keep a secret so big? Then you go to find out, well, can we see pictures from satellites? And say, oh, no, all that's classified. You just destroyed your own argument.
Okay. I just watched through the video and it is a complete launch and everything. So apparently, yeah. Up until the last point stars were visible. I can't explain this. It's very weird. First time I'm seeing anything like this.
Oh no, well, like I say, I've shared the link.
It's a one-go shot.
It also looks like it lands in a marijuana patch.
Hey, Flat Earth, can you hear us?
Yeah, hey. It is.
Hold on, I didn't hear him. I want to level him up. He's always generally quiet.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. How's it going?
Very well. We're talking stars. I get it now. How do I say your name, by the way? Is it Plexus?
Yeah, it's Plexus, which is basically when you see like a 3D model and shows the lines. That's a Plexus view.
Oh, okay. That's a new one on me. Yeah, I hear it in your voice now, so I can sort of draw a bit of familiarity from how you described it just then in respect to when I was doing international travel, and I would always yearn to see Earth curve. Strangely enough, I was the same as everyone else. But I'd be on the flight looking out the back window going, God, I wish I could get higher. I'd just love to see it once, seeing how flat it was out the window. And you're the same with the stars, right? You're like, I just want to see it a bit higher, a bit closer, a bit clearer. You know, that's what you do, right? You look at stars. I can get that yearning to a certain extent because, you know, I've had a fascination with them too. I've owned a telescope. But it wasn't the same to the same degree as Earth curve. I really wanted to see that, and I can hear that in your voice with the stars.
Nathan, you know, you should go to meetup.org and join one of these clubs. They're only like $50 a month. I mean, that would be an absolutely great live stream, you know, as well.
There's people that just do it so much better than I could ever do it. Or certainly, I don't know if you're aware of Take Back Space TV, Christy.
Hey Nathan, can you present me for
hold
a
on,
second?
I'll just do one plug and then I will present you, Alwyn. Yes, maybe not. So there's a channel. Check it out. This is the reason I basically really. There's my telescope on screen now. Good timing. So I got rid of this because of Christy. So he has a channel formerly called CD and now called Take Back Space TV. All one word. So Take Back Space TV is the YouTube channel. And Christy just has a telescope and has a mount and a little, presumably, joystick or something. I don't know. I've not looked at it. But you can go into his chat live and go, show me this crater on the moon, or show me this constellation, or whatever. You know, you can tell him to go to specific, as long as it's in his night sky, obviously.
There's another channel
there.
called PK Imaging that does a similar thing, and they're pretty good too.
Yeah, but there's people out there with. I mean, when he first did it as CD, he had a 1080 camera, and I could get better results. I mean, he was 80% as good as I could get through my own scope when I watched his stream on my big screen at night time. When he went up to 4K, it just pissed all over what I could achieve with my scope. It was better, and it's hard to quite say that because it's going through YouTube, it's being compressed, it's being processed, and then it's coming down my internet line onto my computer, into a projector, through a colour wheel, onto a screen. You'd think it would be nowhere near as good as a scope. Well, just not true. He could on my screen here, like, he exceeds what I could get through my scope with a lot of swearing and kicking the tripod and, you know, generally not getting what you want the first 20 times you try. But he would do it in a second. So I'd go into his chat and say, you know, go and have a look at Mars, please, Chris. And he'd go, yep. 10 seconds later, not even 10 seconds, 2.5 seconds later, he's over it, he's in focus, he's got the ISO level perfect, and you're like, wow, that's so cool. And every time I'm like, how do you do it? And he's like, yeah, it's just muscle memory, you know, I'm doing it so often that I can just go straight to it. So you just,
well, I was thinking about buying those rigs that are a couple $1,000 are motorized and kind of like put it on a channel and just like, you know, with augmented reality kind of impose that onto it, and I might be able to do something pretty cool is what I was thinking.
The problem is heat. The cameras themselves, obviously you're operating them like they're permanently on with the shutter open, and it generates a huge amount of heat. I think he uses Sony, and it's keeping the heat out the camera. That's the biggest problem when you're doing it with a telescope and an adapter, and then streaming it from the camera. So it's bad news for the camera, and it's really difficult. From again what I've ascertained from Chris, I've never done this myself. I've never linked a camera even to a telescope, so, you know, this is way beyond my pay grade. But, you know, I've chatted to him about it, and I've got a reasonable idea what he's doing. And people who watch Crow probably get similar information from Crow in terms of what he's doing with this setup. And yeah, it is fighting the heat out of the camera to actually achieve it, and have it go through your capture card and keep your computer running and all the rest of the normal issues you have with streaming. So, you know, it's an arduous task, and, you know, my hat is definitely off to Take Back Space TV. Go check him out. And like I say, go in there and just chat to him. He's in the chat. He plays his own music in there as well. He's got good. He's a good musician, so he's got good music playing, excellent views of the night sky. And you can just go into the chat and say, "Hey, I'm new here. How's it going? Any chance you can show me this if it's in your sky?" And he will. You know, he's more than happy to oblige. Right, Arwin, you've been waiting patiently. Thank you so much. Right, you're on screen. Go ahead.
So yeah, I skimmed through the entire video and it was pretty impressive. And I found this really odd spot. So as I'm gonna play this part from here on, 5 minutes 36 seconds, I want you to look at what you're seeing and try to analyze what you're seeing through optics and not through any physicality assumption bias. It's gonna be very difficult. Trust me. So just try to identify what you're going to be seeing here. Okay, I'm going to play it.
Space music.
Right. So, what the fuck was that?
Okay. So for the I don't know how you guys. I listen to you guys a lot, but I don't know your expertise on image processing. For this to be achieved, the ISO would have to be turned up to maximum, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it depends, because the higher your ISO is, the grainier the picture will be. We don't really see that much graininess here.
It's pretty grainy.
Well, that's the point. That's the point. If the ISO was turned up to see this, you wouldn't see it because it would be too grainy. But the fact that the image is so clear means that the ISO wasn't turned up, which means that you shouldn't see what you're seeing.
Why are we seeing stars through this very bright halo?
Yeah, because this basically throws out the visible light argument of every single NASA fan on Earth.
Exactly.
Period.
And that's just one of the things. The entire thing looks like it's a freaking flashlight.
Now, can you guys see
as it turns? Just look again. Just look at it. Look at it.
Oh yeah, this is why we use different. I don't rely on visible light. It's very unreliable, to be honest.
And then it turns. What you're seeing there just changes, and this black spot here, it's like a flashlight. It is so weird.
So I have a question for you guys. Have you ever heard of the NASA artist called it's Bruce Berry, Bruce W. Berry? Now, if you guys have ever watched ISS feed and they show for 5 years they've been showing the same nighttime with all the stars as they go outro of the ISS feed. Yeah. Go do me a favor. Google Bruce W. Berry NASA, and he created that entire thing in After Effects. And they just, I often like when I ask I actually, whoever sent this, I give you kudos, because whenever I ask for pictures of stars, they send me the composite video from Bruce Berry made in After Effects. This is actually probably the first time I've ever seen stars in the nighttime sky, not from Bruce Berry. So I give you kudos for that. That's very good. I'm going to examine this, see how they did this. Maybe if I can recreate it. But Google who Bruce Berry is, and you'll see that's all I've ever seen for nighttime stars, and it's pathetic.
Pop yourself on mute, Paul.
Sorry.
Have you guys ever heard of the artist named Bruce Berry by any chance?
I think it does ring a bell. It's been around for a considerable amount of time, right?
Yeah, he's the one who made that, like they show the globe at night and they play the same clip for the last decade, which should be a clue to you that it's composite. But if you go Google who Bruce Berry is, they actually have a documentary of him making it in After Effects. And last time I checked, After Effects is not reality.
No. I'm going to, rather than round out this show because there was a power cut on the first half, I'm just going to leave this live show running. So if you are in the chat, happy days if you're in the live show, because this will be extended. So I won't bother ending the show and having a break. I'll just be patiently sat here hoping there's no power cuts. So as the show is running happily, I'll just extend this live show rather than having a second one a little bit later on. So stay tuned.
Yay!
Yay!
By the way, on my screen, if you guys haven't watched any of Marty Leeds stuff, it's pretty interesting because he goes over a lot of stuff with geometry and numerology, and definitely dives into the occult,
I learned about
sacred
Martin too.
geometry of like the Freemasons and things like that, and squaring the circle, where you get the perimeter of the square is equal to the circumference of the circle. Now, what's interesting is 1080 is approximately the radius of the moon. 3960 is approximately the radius of the earth. And so when you get the square of the circle, you get those numbers exactly. Now, is that coincidence or is that a miracle? What do you guys think?
You have to ask Marty. He's the numerology guy. Well, you tell us, Ebon. What would you say Marty's answer would be to that question?
Well, I don't want to speak for Marty, but
Yeah,
for
but
me,
you've watched a reasonable amount of him to know that he'll probably drawn a conclusion to this, right?
yeah, I still don't, because I would love to get an interview with him so I can actually get a better idea of what he thinks. He just thinks it's I don't want to say it. For me, I just think a lot of these numbers are just too coincidental to actually be what the numbers are, because all these numbers were formulated, if not hundreds, at least 1,000, maybe 2,000 years ago. And for them to coincidentally be what the actual radius of the Earth and the Moon and the radius of the Sun is a special number too, like Jesus's number with the 432, and it's kind of mind blowing. And either, I mean, you're gonna have pretty polar ideas of what it is, whether it's going to be coincidence or a miracle. And it's tough to just wrap your mind around these things. And the only thing I could think of is, well, if they perpetuated the spherical Earth around the like 2,000 years ago with math and trigonometry, Pythagoras and stuff like that, I can see how they use those numbers to put in plain sight, just so people who understand the numerology, the sacred geometry, that it was a big lie.
Yeah, it's they're showing the building blocks of the design.
Yeah, and one of the things that Marty Leeds says is that the Freemasons, and he also interviewed another Freemason, like a high 32-degree Freemason, and they say that when you go into Freemasonry, they tell you that the Earth is flat.
Well, either way, NASA's full of lies, and doesn't really matter at this point.
NASA are
The only thing we
Freemasons.
can rely on is ourselves.
Yeah, but they're predominantly Freemasons.
Yeah.
I think that's the point, right? This is NASA that are selling us on this idea. It's a Freemason idea. Squaring the circle. This is all Freemasonry.
Well, if you look at all the major theories, like giants that used to exist, and they destroyed the Smithsonian, destroyed all the bones, trying to destroy the existence of God. We don't want to tell you what's really in space because we don't want you to have faith. It seems like everything they do is to take people away from God. And I find that very problematic. With some of these so-called conspiracy theories.
All very deep. Have you got something on screen, Ranty? Oh, Slick.
Oh,
Slick's just
yes,
come
I
off
have.
mute. Did you want to add something to that, Slick?
Oh, no. I was just going to talk about something else, about how the universe does a really nice thing by not cooperating with man, because the universe runs on its own clock and it has nothing to do with man's clock. And I'm just really glad for that, because that just shows you that man is trying to do his own thing against the universe. That's why you'll never see anything in the universe do anything consistently. Like, there's no even divisions that you can do with days and months and years, because that's why man has to imagine everything that he imagines because the universe does not cooperate with him. I don't know if I'm saying anything there coherently, but the point that I'm trying to make is that the universe does a nice job not giving man the chance to interfere with it.
Well, one thing I have to say about the universe that I noticed that you might have some thoughts on this, Slick James. It doesn't. There's not one straight line in the universe. The universe does not have any straight lines at all. Observable.
Yeah, right. Just it's like take the moon for example. Now this is their estimation, but the moon does its thing every 27.322 days. See what I mean? So there's no cooperation with it there. You can't divide that evenly to anything. That would never work with man's clock. So man could never take his clock and do anything in the universe because the universe is on a totally different time.
Time is a concept.
Any more for any more? I've got you presented, Ranty, but if anybody else has got anything, it's been a good subject, which is why I'm keeping you hanging out, Ranty.
No, it's fair.
Arwin?
Nope.
Okie dokie. So, I'm going to have to swear. We have a fucktard amongst us. His name's Rory. He thinks that a geometric calculator includes perspective. Now, we all know he's dumb. He doesn't. So Ranty's been driving this home, and thankfully there's some good that comes out of this, because there may be people amongst the audience like Rory, because he's representative of a certain number of people, and there's going to be a certain number of people like Rory who are basically dumb and don't appreciate that geometry is not perspective, and the curve calculators are geometric, not perspective. To put it in Rumpus's words, they're not performing viewing functionality, right? To put it in Wiggles' words, it doesn't need perspective. Or to put it in Kosho's words, you guys are idiots for thinking that you need perspective in the calculator. Right, so these are the globe heads who, unlike Rory, aren't so stupid as to not understand their own religious assertions. So Rory, on the other hand, just thinks that it must include perspective because, like us, he clearly appreciates that when you look at things, perspective is included. It couldn't possibly not be there because it represents the world he believes in. Oh, well, you religious zealot, you're just too dumb to realise you've been fooled. And it doesn't include perspective. Maybe this will be the moment the penny drops for Rory that he doesn't live on a bloody sphere, and all they've done is hijack perspective, put it into a geometric calculator, drawn one line, not getting an angle with one line, Rory, between the target and the observer, and then curving the ground beneath it. So that the obstruction is the reason things disappear, not perspective, because it's not included, you dumb person. Anyway, my introduction is over. Over to you, Ranty.
Oh, hold on. You made a mistake. It's not obstruction.
Yeah, it was in that context, because I'm talking about their calculator and their obstruction, so can't get me on that one.
Hey, by the way, sorry to interrupt this, Ranty, I'll leave you to it, but I figured out a good word for it. I don't know if you've noticed, but why don't you just call it concealment? It's one word. It's basically the same effect.
I like that.
Except
No, it's wrong.
there is no thing suggesting to be in the way. It's just concealed. So concealment. What do you
I
think?
think that's a good word. By the way, that was a great video.
Do you know what concealment means? The action of hiding something or preventing it from being known.
Yes.
Well,
So it is,
hiding,
isn't it?
it's not being hidden.
No, it is. We're not seeing it.
It's not. It's
out
not
of
being.
sight.
It's incapable of being resolved due to the aperture of the equipment being used to resolve it. That's
right.
not
So it's
the
being
same.
hidden by the limitations of the equipment.
The equipment's not hiding anything.
Oh, it is.
It's not. It's just too small to resolve.
Right, and that could be considered hiding.
It's not hiding.
Yes. Come on, don't be pedantic.
No, I shouldn't laugh at you. I admire the fact that you're fishing for a term. It's like when people, I can't remember an equivalent, but there's other times that people have used maybe dirty air or something else that you want to just strangle them and say, look, we need to actually figure out what's going on here rather than attributing this crazy word to it. Whereas in this instance, we've now got this realization, thanks to the guest yesterday, that they are actually using this presupposition of obstruction very specifically in every instance. When you curve the ground that I described earlier between the feet of the observer and the target, that is the only thing causing it to disappear, the obstruction. So in every instance, be it weather, be it angular resolution, the diffraction limit, doesn't matter what it is that's actually caused things to disappear, and they do for those reasons, it's always obstruction. And what Arwin's attempting to do is find a different definition when we say, well, something has gone from the bottom up, right? Or is unresolvable at the bottom. It's just so less concise, and we need some better terminology. So hopefully we'll get some comments below the video in that regard. We've left Ranty hanging forever. Come on, Arwin.
Right, but come on, we can do it. Concealment until we find something better, because otherwise you're going to just keep on calling it obstruction, and you know that's wrong.
But that's hidden. And what's the value on the calculator?
No,
the value.
Concealment
means hidden, and the value in their calculator is the hidden value, Arwin. So no, sorry, you're just gonna have to. You're gonna have to do better.
No,
you have to do better.
It's basically the obstruction value. They're actually using their terminology wrong, because it is not literally.
What the hidden and refracted hidden values? You mean, Owen? Look, this is a fail. Just accept it. Let's move on to Ranty.
Concealment is great. Obstruction suggests something is in front of it.
Well, I have a
technical problem. We talked about it extensively. You agreed, and concealment doesn't do that. Doesn't matter what they use in their science fiction machinations, because it's all presuppositional bullshit anyway.
Shout out to Theo for the super chat. He says concealment is as nonsense as an obstruction.
Well, I have a question about all that. So you have vanishing point and you have the curve. So if I go to the beach and I watch a ship go over the quote unquote horizon, I can pick up a pair of binoculars. I can bring that ship back into focus. Can watch it for a second time go over the horizon, and then can pick up a more powerful telescope and bring that ship back into a third time back into focus, and then can watch it a third time go over the quote-unquote horizon. At what point in time do binoculars or telescopes bend space and time to see around matter? I haven't gotten a good explanation for that.
They don't.
Well,
what they're doing is resolving.
Guys, if you have a powerful enough telescope, you can see around the Earth and see your ass. So,
you got to remember, so gases, on the, when you're looking up, gases are a lot thinner. Gases are very thick when you're looking horizontally. So you're trying to look through all these different layers of gases. It's gonna, have a finite point. And remember, light bends down as it goes through the gases as well.
Okay, right. We've held Ranty long enough. He's been on page. He's all keen. He's so patient. Thank you, Ranty.
No worries. Is everyone finished now?
No, I think data loss is a retarded way to express it.
Right, until all right, let's get Arwin to concede. I know what to do. I can handle this. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. I can do this. I can do this. Arwin, right. Until something better comes, concealment it is.
Yay!
Yay! Right, Ranty, off you go.
I don't agree with concealment, but there you go.
Me neither.
Let's go. Right, okay, so we all know that Rory, the resident retard of the Globe Earthers, has put a challenge out to basically anybody, specifically flat earthers. And this is his challenge. £5,000 on the table if anybody can prove that the curve calculators don't include perspective. So in that, there's actually a subtle hint that the curve calculators actually include perspective. That's his opinion. He put the challenge out to anybody to try and disprove this claim that the curve calculators don't include perspective. And the reason he did this, and you'll notice that he did it, and he took on the Flat Earth debate team, essentially you, Nathan, and Anthony Riley. He called you guys out originally for this. And because you guys didn't respond to this, basically he opened it up to anybody else. But essentially it was because of this idea that things can disappear due to perspective. He doesn't like that idea. And I did a video recently proving that things can actually disappear from the bottom up due to perspective. I'm just going to run through a couple of things and solidify what actually perspective is. For instance, from the Cambridge English Dictionary, we have the term perspective, and the words used to describe perspective are the way that objects appear smaller when they are further away. Okay, so things get smaller as they go further away. I'll now show you an example of how the globers would show Blackpool Tower. This is Blackpool Tower across some water, and obviously this is the camera way down here, and this is how they would orthographically show Blackpool Tower from a side-on view. However, this is more realistic. If you was going to do it from a side-on view, what you would have to do is you'd have to actually shrink the size of Blackpool Tower due to its distance and its angular size change over distance.
Sorry, it's just off screen a little bit.
Sorry, let me...
There we go. Move it to the left. Perfect. There we go.
So there's Blackpool Tower way over in the distance, but it is far, far smaller in perspective ways as opposed to this, which is far bigger. So, next point. This is how they would assume... sorry, this is the challenge that I set to Rory. So I said that from a distance of 34 miles away, and we will beg the question, we will beg that the Earth is curved, we will beg the question that there is standard refraction, that the weather conditions on this day were perfect for standard refraction. I gave a whole different parameters, including the elevation of the camera being exactly 6 feet. Essentially what that meant was that as we look across this hump, this curve, the top of the tower, as I zoom in, the top of the tower would be visible, the flag at the top of the tower. Now you can't actually see it properly here, but what we have is we have Blackpool Tower, and then at the top we have a little pole, and we have the flag at the top. So essentially 3.2 feet of the tower should be visible in the curve calculators. So plug in all the data in, and I'll give you the data. The data was 544 feet would be the height of Blackpool Tower above actual sea level. The curve calculators would say that 540.8 feet would be hidden to Earth curvature, meaning that 3.2 feet would be visible of Blackpool Tower. So that's the data. Curve calculators would say visible, and I'll prove this here and now. Here I've taken a screenshot and overlaid it on the image that I've just showed you. This is taken from Walter Bislin's curve calculator. And essentially it's the same sort of diagram. We have the bulge, which is in the center. So here we've got the bulge, and we have a visible portion and a hidden portion. So if I scroll into that here, and I'll show you that. Visible, hidden, and obviously you've got hidden down here, and visible, which would be 3.2 feet of the top of the flag. So perfect example of the curve calcs actually just showing two values, hidden or visible, right?
I have a quick question. Do you have any pictures of where that point is, like what it actually looks in reality?
Sure, but just keep it till the end.
Okay, so...
Oh, yeah.
So looking for a dictionary term for what is visible, visible is able to be seen. That's it, very concise, able to be seen. Give some examples, including the comet should be visible to the naked eye. So visible is in visible, able to be seen. So we have 3.2 feet of the tower visible or able to be seen, but is it? So what we're going to do now is we're going to look into the angular size of that 3.2 feet over the distances involved. Now I've changed these into meters, and I've put the distance at 54,717.7 meters, which is 34 miles. The size that I'm trying to see, which is 1 meter, 3.2 feet or thereabouts. And we have a angle. The angle that is given is 0.001 degrees. Let's have a look at how that would look if we're looking at a protractor, sorry, not protractor, the angle here, we're looking across the water at the top of the tower. Here we have 1 degree. This point here, between the big black marker here and this one here, is 1 degree. And we're trying to look at 1/1000th of that gap, 1/1000th over a distance of 34 miles. That's how minuscule 0.001 degree is, and how small that flag would be at the top of the tower. I'll get to that point in a minute. Obviously, we have diffraction in photography. Diffraction is the optical effect which limits the total resolution of your photography, no matter how many megapixels your camera may have. It happens because light begins to disperse or diffract when passing through a small opening, such as your camera's aperture. This effect is normally negligible, since smaller apertures often improve sharpness by minimizing lens aberrations. However, sufficiently small apertures, this strategy becomes counterproductive, at which point your camera is said to become diffraction limited. Knowing this limit can help maximize detail, etc., etc. Diffraction limited, that's very important, because every camera is diffraction limited. And let me tell you, an angle of 0.001 certainly would not be able to be resolved by any P1000, P900 camera or anything like that. You could even use telescopes. It would not be able to be seen. So the simple fact of the matter is, Rory, and obviously we're going to look on the diffraction limited system. However, there is a principal limit to the resolution of any optical system due to the physics of diffraction. Yeah, an optical system with resolution performance at the instrument's theoretical limit is said to be diffraction limited. Now, obviously, there's a point that you cannot see beyond, and most cameras, believe it or not, actually don't even use the external pix, the outside of the camera lens, as stated here. Going back to this this angle, this 0.001 wouldn't be able to be resolved. In fact, the human eye needs to be 0.02 before it can actually starts to be diffracted. So this is essentially, what's this, 0.02? Well, it's a lot further. It's a lot smaller anyway. And there we go. And this is Rory. This is an email response that I've had from Rory. Now, you guys are going to love this, because the point I want you to focus on is this point here, point 1. Nathan, feel free to jump in anytime that you feel like it. The curve calculator predicts that approximately 3.2 feet may be able to be seen if your measurements are correct. Well, they are correct, and that's a statement of fact, and he's agreeing with that. Of course, the curve calculator works on the basis of things like, ready for it? Visibility. The curve calculator works on the basis of things like visibility. Has anybody got anything to say about that?
Just keep reading.
Standard refraction, obviously, accurate figures, and the best bit of all, and that the object you're looking at is big enough to be seen in the first place. In other words, he believes that the curve calculators actually take into account things getting smaller in the distance.
Okay.
Can you believe that?
Now, can you go back to your very first slide, which I believe was a definition of perspective? Second slide. Yep. Should make it big. Can you just read that again?
Perspective. The way that objects appear smaller when they are further away.
And then if you can go back to Rory's description, that the assumption that if something is too small. Okay, just read that.
And that the object you're looking at is big enough to be seen in the first place.
So Rory's own words condemn him into an admission that there is an assumption that something's not too small to have gone already. So that would be an assumption of what now, Rory? Perspective? So Rory, you're saying you assume it's not too small to see. So where's that included in the calculation when you draw one line? Do you get an angle from that single line, Rory? In orthographic view, geometric, giving the game away that it's not including perspective. What a fuckwit.
And let me just look at the image from Walter Bislin's, and we'll just go over here and we'll just ram this home again. We have a hidden value and we have a visible value. Nowhere do we have a grey area in the middle that says geometrically able to be seen, but too small to be seen by any known camera.
Well, let me just add something, and then we'll pass over to Plexus because he had the first question. So, right, that line, and I'm going to do it with my mouse. This line is a single line. Above is visible, below is hidden. Well, what would be useful to know if something's too small to see? Well, it would be needing an extra line that gives you an angle, but they don't do that. That would be the perspective bit that's been removed. Now, if you zoom out, you can actually see that the perspective is... Hold on. Hello. Oh dear, yes, they've absolutely hijacked perspective, Eleanor. So, what they've done is give you this bulge where it should be an angle. So they've said, not an angle from the eye, but a bulge. So it's always a physical obstruction. And it looks like they're drawing out angles. It's very, very clever. It's very deceptive, but ultimately speaking, this single line that meets the horizon, the claimed bulge, is not giving you an angle. It's a single line. And that's what Ranty's saying. On this single line, you'd need to work out how big the angle to the flag is, so that you could work out whether or not it's too small to see. Not an assumption that you can just see it, Rory. That would be ignoring perspective. You absolute retard. I'm done. Over to you, Plexus.
Okay. First, I'd like to say that is very excellent work, Ranty, first off. And we come back to the same thing I was talking about the telescope or binoculars perspective, you know, when you can watch a boat go over the horizon. And then when you finally run out of telescopes, the NASA fan will say, aha, that must be the curve. You know, it's kind of the same thing. The same problem. Where can you show me that telescopes and binoculars see through curves? Is it a trick of physics? If it is, where is this math? You know, he's going by the curve calculator. Shouldn't there be other maths that applied? And my last question is you took that example. Is that a repeatable example? Is that like is there a beach that far away that you can observe this and we can actually see what this looks like in reality by any chance?
Yes, there is. And
I'd love to see that. I really would.
Yes, there is. And to be fair, I've been to a very similar distance to this and seen Blackpool Tower in almost all its entirety. So, you know, it's utter horse manure to believe that we live on a sphere. I've captured far, greater distances of the tower at night with Anthony Riley when we went to Hoy Lake, 29.3 miles away. And I think there should have been 480 feet of curvature between ourselves and the tower. And we were seeing almost down to the base. In fact, we saw the mirror ball, which was only like 50 feet above sea level.
Well, have you considered a trick of physics might be fooling us? I mean, can you maybe discuss that a little bit? You know, all plausible answers are answers. So,
well, before we say that, Nathan, do you want to read this bit, because this is his own words? I've actually highlighted the part that I want you to read. You there, Nathan? Okay, so he says, if I look out my window and I can see about 6 miles, somewhere out there are insects and mice. There's nothing obstructing them, and any calculator, flat or curved, would predict that they should be visible. So why can't I see them? Because they are too small. Well, Rory, that's our entire point, you Burke.
Is he a moron? Are we talking about a moron right now?
I think so.
Like, I'm
Well, I
sorry.
wouldn't. I
because-
would. Don't call them morons. I call them like a Kool-Aid drinker. You know.
Yeah, well, pretend clown, moron, Kool-Aid. I mean, what the hell? Doesn't matter what you call them.
I like to be a little nicer.
All right. Well, I don't have it for that right now. It's like, what are you talking about? The things get smaller in distance. That's the hell. That's what we're saying. I mean, what? Anyway.
You know, he gets it, but he doesn't understand that this is our argument. He's literally agreeing with our argument and can't see how it's not being applied to his argument. And it's the reason it's not being applied to his argument is because the curve calculators don't include it. And, you know, I've tried to explain it to him. He's still not listening. Still not listening.
What about a trick of physics? Let's say light somehow refracts up and back and down and gives us false mirage. Is there anything like that at all that can explain how we can make curves a straight line viewable to the observer? Anyway.
Well, I've never seen looming, if that's what you're trying to say. So in answer to your question, I don't see it. And I've tried to document looming using a post that's in the foreground 4 miles away from an observable point, which I can go to every single day, go to the exact same point, which is a set of railings on the promenade, look at the post, and directly behind it, we have the buildings of Barrow, which are some 18.3 miles away. And I have never, ever experienced the buildings behind the post in a different relative position to the post in any of my photography or videos ever.
They don't shine up like the bat signal. They don't start just super looming and
no, they
all
don't
that nonsense.
around.
You've never seen that.
They don't start jumping around. And let's be quite clear here that if you're trying to view something at the span of, say, 4 or 5 miles in, you know, so you're looking at a distant town and you're looking over, let's say, 20 miles of water. In order to get a uniform lifting or looming of those buildings, the weather conditions would have to be exactly the same over that entire 20-mile stretch of water without any difference whatsoever, because even if there was a tenth of a degree difference, or it was raining or cloudy or misty in a certain area, just something that lowered the pressure even, you wouldn't see a uniform lifting of those buildings. They would all be disjointed. They would be angled and twisted and deformed, and we never see that. I mean, I've been down to the beach at Anxholm seeing Barrow in Furness from essentially a foot lower than that. I've even seen it at 0. You know, literally, I dug a hole in the sand and waited for the water to envelop the camera almost, and was still able to see these buildings at Barrow 18.3 miles away, which should have all been gone to Earth curve, right? So, yeah, I don't see it. You know,
well, not only Earth curve. Let's talk about gas. Let's talk about the noble gas of oxygen and nitrogen. It bends light down, right? Correct? Over distance.
Say that again. What did you? I don't know.
Okay, so as light passes through oxygen, it bends light down. It refracts it. Correct? It sends it all over the place, right?
Okay.
So if you're looking at something and you're able to see it, not only do you have the curve to deal with, but actually refraction itself. You know, there's nothing to account for that.
Yeah, but again, you're begging the question here when you say you're including the curve. You know, you're assuming that you live on a sphere. It's
I'm the type of person I like to use their science against them. You know what I mean? Because that's my best weapon. You know, so that's how I approach it. If that makes sense.
It's far easier just to look at an object and say we see it, than for them to try and explain that this is being miraged as some kind of I don't know, just a hologram that's being lifted up from beyond the curvature, visible for everybody to see. It's not really there. If you took a rifle and tried to shoot it, and you had some kind of specialized laser weapon that could travel for 20 miles, say, and you took dead aim at these buildings, you would shoot it, and those buildings wouldn't be there. You wouldn't hit it. You would miss it because they're a hologram. this is what these guys are trying to say.
I know, but we all got here because we're open-minded. So I try not to lose that open-mindedness, even no matter what position of the fence I'm on. You know what I mean? And I think it's a good thing.
The thing is, we can describe why things disappear from the bottom up. We can, there's a whole multitude of different reasons why things can disappear from the bottom up. One of them has just been described just now. Literally that the angle is too small to be seen. I went a little bit further and I dug around to try and get to a degree that was of a similar degree, and found that at 69 miles, 137 feet would be missing. And that's just due to diffraction, just not being able to see, the angle being too small. So you could have a row of hotels on the seafront and you're looking across a Great Lake, say 69 miles away, and the entire seafront of hotels up to 137 feet in height would be missing due to diffraction, just missing, because the camera can't see it, the angle's too small. And they would claim it would be Earth curvature. And you hear it often, them saying, well, how come you don't see the beaches? How come you don't see the cars going along the promenade? Things like that.
I've come up with the same argument. It's kind of when I present the argument, if I have 35 different telescopes of different powers, zoom lenses, and I can constantly bring back the ship, at some point I cannot use a telescope. It's just going to disappear into the vantage point. And then they'll say, aha, that's the curvature. It doesn't really work for me.
No, the thing is, and the curve calculators don't include visibility, and that's one thing that this Rory doesn't understand. In fact, the first thing he claimed in his email to me was that the curve calculators include visibility. Well, I've never seen visibility in any of these curve calculators, where you can put in, what kind of weather conditions was it? Was it raining? Was it foggy? Was it misty?
Well, weather conditions, temperature can change the composition of the air. Temperature, heat, everything, So you not only would you need to calculate all that as well, because light refracts differently through more rich nitrogen atmosphere than it does oxygen, and all that really depends on the temperature, time of day, the sun position, yada yada yada. And I've never seen a calculator do any of that.
Well, the thing is, I think he's this Rory guy. He sold his Globe Earth friends down the river with this one email.
Hey,
essentially, he's saying that that the curve calculator's taken into effect that objects get smaller in the distance. Basically, that's what he said, and he also claims that there is a point that you can't see a mouse or a fly or something at 6 miles away. Now that's something that we've used, and we've had globe heads come in and we've asked them the same thing. In fact, I've specifically asked them that. I've said, can you see a fly at 20 miles away? And they've returned the answer, yes.
Well, here's the thing. It's like if you take a wide angle lens and you put a ruler, which we all agree is straight, or a yardstick, and you put a couple 100 feet away and you zoom in on it with a wide angle lens, do you know what happens? The edges will slightly curve down, and that's because of limitations of the camera. Our eyes and cameras do not work the same, and to have that assumption, is false. So you got to consider that.
So if you
Ranty, can you pull up your email again, please?
Hang on. Am I screen sharing still? I don't know if I am.
No, you're not at the moment.
Right. Share my screen. Where are we? Here we go. Right, there we go.
Oh, Nathan did it for me on Skype. That was nice of him to do that, so I don't have to look at it here. 1 second, please.
I've got additional.
Okay.
You can see more on my.
Below your red box.
Yep.
Can you read the next sentence, please?
It's got nothing to do with perspective. It's, as you say, angular size, or rather, simple common sense.
Does anything stand out to you there?
So in the box, he says it's literally because they're too small, and in the next sentence, it's got nothing to do with perspective. So that's
No.
big.
Try again, chocolate. just stick to the one sentence. It's got nothing to do with perspective, comma. It's, comma, as you say, comma, angular size, hyphen, or rather, comma, simple common sense, full stop. Let's just focus on that single sentence. Any issues with that sentence, Chocolate?
The perspective would be the angular size that he's talking about.
Ding, 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 ding.
Like, so it's got nothing to do with this, but it's got to do with this, basically.
Yeah, well spotted. I didn't read that far, John.
And it says it in number 3. That's not perspective. That's angular size. That's not water. That's H2O.
Right, exactly.
Thank you. No further
This guy,
questions.
this is what I said before. Is this guy? Are we talking to a moron right now? I mean, I don't know.
Sorry, so for all the people out there that have asked me over and over again to tell them what diffraction is, Rory, what's diffraction?
This is golden. This, I mean, you know, we know he's not going to pay the £5,000 to anybody that completes the task. Obviously, I've completed the task, but just the email, you know, back and forth with him has condemned him and his entire argument. I mean, how he can show his face to other Globers after what he's put right here, I just don't know. He's literally hung himself out to dry. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, what I noticed with Globers, they seem very content on having other people think for them. So,
can I read it again with a bit of a translation? It's got nothing to do with perspective. It's, as you say, perspective.
Exactly. That's exactly what it says.
Should we label this guy? Funny. What kind of level of dumb is this? Would you say, John?
Crayon Munch level 1000.
I would say he's reached Super Saiyan 3 level of dumb.
I mean, bearing in mind, we've been saying for the last week that there's half the Globe team that have come on the panel basically admitting to and being pushed into a corner where they basically say the calculator doesn't include perspective, to as much as we can push them into saying those words. But here we are with a contradiction in terms in one single sentence. It's nothing to do with perspective. It's, as you say, angular size. My God.
Yeah.
What an absolute embarrassment.
Yeah, this is 2019, and this is a 2015 argument that's been pummeled so many times, but we get people like this out here talking this nonsense. I don't know if this guy or any of the baltards could pass picking up cans alongside of the road unassisted, because all they're doing is parroting each other without any depth or background. They just parrot each other. It
comes back to what I said earlier. They're just very content with having a smart guy thought of it, so therefore I don't need to think, and that's what I get from them. You know.
Nathan, can you read the part out in the box, please? I tried to get you to do that before, but you was away from the mic.
No, you take the honours, Ranty. You go ahead.
No, I've already read it once. I want you to read it. Go on.
I look out my window and I can see about 6 miles. Somewhere out there are insects and mice. There's nothing obstructing them, and any calculator, flat or curved, would predict that they should be visible. So why can't I see them? Because they're too small! So that would be their angular size. Fuck God.
And the worst part is he says there's a calculator that will tell him that he can see this thing fly at 20 miles. I mean, what?
He's literally agreeing with my argument.
Well, another thing you have to consider is the moon is supposedly 249,000 miles away, and we can zoom into it and get great detail. Meanwhile, anything up in space is what, 250 to 300 miles up? And go ahead and try to find something of great detail from that distance. It doesn't really add up, you know, at all.
I agree. I mean, we should, as much as it's fun to laugh at the pure stupidity that is this Rory guy, you know, as John says, it's a 2015 argument. We've absolutely pummeled this, exposed it to our own realisation several years ago, and now to many of the audience, certainly all the panel's realisation, just not Rory's. You know, to the point where the Globeheads are having to rephrase their arguments to justify the lack of perspective in their calculations when they argue with us. So from the point of view of Rory, yeah, it's beyond stupidity, and it is very good fun to laugh at just how stupid this guy actually is when he's talking about a geometric calculator, and in his justification basically says it's nothing to do with perspective, it's, as you say, angular size, or how big an angle things are in the distance, which we have asserted, this is the main point, which we have asserted for quite a long time now, is the reason for things disappearing into the distance. That's perspective. And perspective has been hijacked. So they assert that when you see things getting smaller into the distance, like these wind turbines that are on screen now, they tell you that the reason they are going as they appear is because they are curving around the Earth. And all they have actually done is taken the effect of perspective and labelled it Earth curvature to convince people who have been brainwashed by way of cinematography into believing they live on a sphere, into having a way of measuring a sphere when one does not exist. There is no sphere beneath our feet. There is only the effect of objects getting smaller with distance. And when we say smaller, we don't mean their actual size. A 10-foot wall is always a 10-foot wall, regardless of its distance. But the angular size, as Rory puts it, reduces with distance to the point where things can disappear. However, the calculator, the Earth curve calculator, only asserts that things disappear due to an obstruction caused by Earth curvature, when in reality there is no obstruction. We are seeing objects disappear with distance due to their angular size reduction as they reach the diffraction limit, the point where they can no longer be resolved and disappear because the aperture in your equipment isn't big enough to see them. That is ignored in the Earth curve calculator. And to all the Muppets who think, well, it must be included because it's reality, right? We live on a sphere. No, the Earth is obviously and observably flat. And with that, I will say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of today's debating panel for making today's debate possible. But if you are watching on Nathan Oakley channel, stay tuned as there will be a short after show to follow as I fiddle furiously with all my buttons. Once again, a massive thank you to all the debating panel, and of course a massive thank you to all of you in the live audience for tuning into this extended live show. My apologies to anybody who was with us at the start when we had a massive power cut. If you need something to keep you occupied after this live stream is over, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. One last thank you to everybody who smashed the super chat. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video. Click, 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 lots of buttons. There we go. That's the one.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!